Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are drawing another one of our Mortal Kombat characters. We're sort of reaching the end, I would say, of some of these Mortal Kombat things. I don't envision we're going to be doing too many more of these. I've only got two more left really in the pipeline that I can think of ideas for, and that's sort of where we're at with these, where I'm kind of running out of ideas for these redesigns a little bit. Today we're doing Noob Saibot, who's a character who I've had to do a lot of thinking about how I'm going to redesign this one. And so what I've come to is something. It's a little bit. It's got clear elements from other designs, but it's also got a lot of sort of stuff which I've just thrown in on my own. There's a clear sort of design element that moves throughout the design in every sort of bit and piece, but largely it's the type of thing of where some of this we'll see. I might have to do some changes to this one because I'm not so certain. But some of it, but there's I think it's an interesting enough design. It's different from what we've done before. It's not too similar to any of our previous designs. It has a reference or two in there to prior designs, but for the most part, it is its own thing. Without further ado, I will roll the intro and then I will show you what I have. So yeah, this is where we're at. Now you might notice I'm a little bit over to the side here a little bit more. That's because I have a slightly new setup here where I have my tablet always set up over here. So that's why I'm leaning over here a little bit more. I've moved it over more to the center, but I still have to move over to the side a little bit. Anyways, I digress. So, this is what we have. So as you can see, there are two clear design motifs in here, and it is lines and points. So that's kind of where a lot of this moves through. He's got spikes on his boots, on his gauntlets, and he's got lines and little buttons on his robe. Now his robe I deliberately designed with rips and tears in it. So he's got this sort of a little bit of a cloak. I didn't want to go too far with the cloak because I didn't want it to look too similar to Ermac's design, because Ermac had a very deliberate big cloak that I gave him because I wanted it to look a bit more like a sorcerer while still maintaining a lot of those ninja design elements. And so here I want him to look a bit more undead, because that was something which I didn't necessarily emphasize in Scorpion's design, even though he is, undead. I still kept a lot of the edgier design elements, but this is the thing. Noob Saibot is the true edgelord character. There has to be spikes. He has to be a bit more evil looking, and everything has to be black. Which is going to be the other tricky part of this, is I'm going to need to, in terms of colors, try and make this look interesting. I had, like realistically what we're actually drawing here is just Noob Saibot is nowhere to be seen. What I was originally going to do is I was originally going to make my life a lot harder, and also have Saibot sort of peeling out of him to the side, but I'm not going to do that for the sake of keeping my sanity. So instead, I'm just going to focus on Noob, and I might just give him a bit of a shadow underneath, like an actually clearly defined shadow, because the other characters don't have that. But yeah, so I wanted this to sort of have a nice blend of hardware and software, I suppose would be the term, but the hardware of the design being all the hard materials, such as the gauntlets, the shoulder pads, the mask, the boots and stuff like that, and then also the robe. Because this is the thing, is that there's some overlap here in terms of Sub-Zero's design. The Sub-Zero that we designed before is supposed to be the second Sub-Zero. So this, spoilers, is the original. And so there is some design overlap here, not much. The sash in the middle is tied at the opposite side. I suppose, again, it's like poetry, it rhymes. You could throw that sort of idea in there. But yeah, so the Sub-Zero that we designed had a lot of bits of hardware in there. He had a hard belt with the sash over it. He had hard gauntlets. Well, actually, no, he didn't have gauntlets at all. His arms were completely clear. But he had sort of big shoulder pieces. He had big boots. And stuff like that. Whereas here we're throwing in bits of metal, which a lot of characters haven't really had much in terms of metal in their design. So his boots here are fully metal. They're greaves. And it's the same with his gauntlets. They are big gauntlets. So they've got the spikes on them. They've got the elbow spikes, so you can elbow someone and stab them. And he's got like sort of these pointed bits along the knuckles of his glove here, where the glove itself would probably be like a leather material, but then the knuckle bits would probably be metal on top of that. Now, I'm not sure whether or not I'll give him sleeves or his bare arms. Generally speaking, Noob Saibot doesn't have his bare arms out. He's usually completely covered apart from here. But I think it might just be more interesting to have his arms out, because a lot of the characters haven't really had their arms out. I'm lying. They've pretty much all had their arms out, but I think that's good for consistency's sake. In terms of the ninja designs here, literally all the ninjas have their arms out, more or less. So yeah, he's got two different shoulder pads. They're asymmetrical. This shoulder pad is a rounder one, but it comes up the shoulder a bit more, which is why the cloak sort of raises up a bit more on that shoulder. His cloak sort of tucks over this one a little bit, so this is the sort of big flat shoulder pad that has the sort of lines of sort of padding to it. Even the robe itself has lines of padding to it, so it's got a bit of that Mortal Kombat 3 energy to it. But the robe is a very sort of different, it's a very different shape than any of the ninja robes that we've been doing so far, of where it's the one central piece that then tucks into the sash and then falls down as the one sort of central long bit there, a fabric that then rips at the bottom. But then there's this sort of tunic shape underneath, which has this sort of thing here. This should actually also be padded there. I have to remind myself to do that, because that's an inconsistency there. Actually, no, you could just say that's double layered. So yeah, this robe has these sort of different elements like this, of where there is a little bit that you can see almost there of the sort of back of this this long piece of fabric that then tucks into the sash. But yeah, the underlying tunic is sort of very simple. It's got these little bits of bits of padding along the end. The sort of thicker, I'd say probably like leather lining, something like that, that goes into it, and then the over sort of this outer bit of fabric that goes along this side here. And then again, like little buttons there to sort of keep the shoulder pieces on. And then into these sort of this little line here that should continue down there. And the trousers are again simple, baggy ninja pants. There's nothing more to it than that. There's a little line going through just to sort of again spice it up a little bit. I might think about doing some sort of patterning or something. His hood has this sort of strip along the edge of it, and then these sort of lines of padding, again maybe a slightly different material along the top of it, so that if he's like headbutting someone, he's not hurting his head, even though he's a ghost, so I don't know that he really needs to worry about that. But yeah, and then we've got again the hard metal boots and the hard metal gloves. And so yeah, so the mask is the only thing I really haven't touched on too much here. So his face, I'm just going to keep it very, very simple. It's just going to be the sort of creased, the very sort of aggressively creased brow. No eyebrows, but his eyes will have a little bit of glow to them, I think. It's like a very faint glow. And then his mask is pretty similar to the one from Mortal Kombat 9. It's pretty similar to that. His hood is more like the hood from Mortal Kombat 11, of where it's a very deep point on it. But for the most part, a lot of this design doesn't pull too heavily from a lot of the other designs. The mask, as I say, is pretty similar to his Mortal Kombat 9 mask. It's mostly the same. It has a very similar shape of this sort of long metal piece that goes along the top, and then the sort of central cone in the front that would come out, and that sort of, it has almost this sort of Darth Vader shape to it, which is kind of what we want. It looks very evil. It's very traditionally evil looking, which is kind of what we want to evoke. And that's almost a sort of part of what Noob Saibot's design has a lot of. It has a lot of that Darth Vader sort of stuff to it, and that's almost what I'm putting in here as well. It's what I'm trying to evoke at the end of the day. But color-wise, again, it's not going to be a very difficult design, because it all has to be different shades of grey and black. Even his skin is, again, it's a grey tone, so I need to go for something like that. I might lighten up his skin a little bit, because his skin is usually very dark, but we'll see. It should be dark, because it should be in contrast to his eyes. His eyes should very much stand out against a lot of this. But I think stuff like The mask, the gauntlets, and the boots are all the big metal bits, so they'll remain that. Maybe this sort of strip along here is a metal lining to the shoulder pad. This shoulder pad is maybe metal. Stuff like that. Then the core robe, the trousers need to be a darker color. Not necessarily darker, the trousers could be lighter. The trousers could be the same color as the sash and the cloak. Yeah, and then the inner robe has these sort of dark black bits here. Maybe these sort of dark black there. Maybe along there, maybe along the sort of padding. Yeah, there's things I can do here. I'm gonna have to have a think about that in more detail later, but that's not really right now's problem. So yeah, I'm not sure what more I need to say. I've done a lot of rambling, as per usual, but I've gone through a lot of the stuff. I specifically had a good look through my other designs because I was convinced that I'd already used this pointed boot thing, but I hadn't, so I decided to go for it. Same with like the spikes and everything. None of the characters have had explicit spikes on their design. I think the closest we came was Sub-Zero has like a spike on his shoulders that sort of points up, but he's the only character who really has that. Scorpion's design is very robe heavy. Reptile's design is very much, I'm just going by the male ninjas. The Reptile's design is it's like a coat. It's sort of what's supposed to look like the long robe shape. And Ermac's design is, again, it's all pure robe. It's all like wraps and robe. So yeah, no, we actually haven't used the spikes thing at all yet. Which again is strange. I thought I would have used it by now. Anyways, speaking of doing things by now, I thought I would have started this thing by now. So I will do these details and then I'll be back to do the colors. So yeah. So that is our details done. So that took a while. I took a bit of a break there as well, so that's why the lighting is now different, because it is now the evening. So I didn't really make any crazy adjustments in these details. The only real things that I think be maybe even worth noting is stuff like I sort of defined a few things a little bit more, added like a little strip, not even a strip, a little like a little seam, or a little like sort of a little padded seam to the trousers. I sort of, I added a bit more padding to certain stuff like this, so that's more consistent with the top now. I added this sort of side bit here, and that looks a little bit more interesting, I think, anyways. But a lot of this design is very loose, so you aren't really getting a lot of the sort of definition at the front. Not that you really did in the other designs either, but there was more sort of separation in things. So here, a lot of the robe sort of is just, it's very big and bulky. So in that sense, it still covers a lot. You're not really getting to see a lot of the sort of shape of him. He's got fairly sort of chunky, thick shape. But that's just sort of how he's built as well. Not just in how, like, obviously the robe is concealing his shape a little bit, but that is just also, yeah, kind of how he's built here. He's built pretty big. I made him kind of bulky. He's a little shorter than some of the other ninjas we've been doing recently. Like, I made Ermac quite tall, and he's quite tall and thin, and so it was the same sort of thing I gave with kind of Reptile. Has a similar build. The female ninjas I made specifically a little bit taller. But yeah, Reptile has a similar build to Ermac in that he's kind of thin, kind of tall, but he's more sort of, he's slim and kind of buff. But the one so far who was like properly buff was Scorpion. Scorpion's the one who I decided to make a little shorter, a bit bulkier. And then Sub-Zero is a little taller than that, a little less bulky. Just so they all have slightly different physiques, so that they look a bit more different. Because that was a big part of this whole thing, is to make them look a little bit more interesting, while still keeping some conforming design elements, but allowing them to still look very different. That they still look very different. And that there's certain boxes that need to be ticked. They still need to look like a ninja. They still need to have their mask. They still need to have so on and so forth in terms of their design. All that stuff has to be there. But outside of that, they don't need to have any other design elements that are consistent. So that's the thing. There's a few elements which overlap between characters, but for the most part, they're very, very different looking so far. But yeah, so that's kind of all I did. I didn't really change much in terms of the design from what you saw before. It's mostly the same. I just sort of defined a few things, changed a few little elements, trimmed in the arms a tiny bit because I felt like they were a bit big, and yeah, for the most part, it's all fairly consistent with how it was before. But yeah, you could maybe say that this is, like, outside of the hood and the mask, that this is pretty similar to how he looked whenever he was the original Sub-Zero. And maybe the idea being that this is like, oh, this is parts of his original design that are now all ripped up and something, and so on and so forth. There's something there, I think, in terms of an idea. Hence why his arms are still out, because usually in most of the Noob Saibot designs where he's like pure ghoulie, there tends to be sleeves. He's usually got sleeves. He's one of the only ninjas that pretty consistently has sleeves. So again, maybe that's how it is. Maybe that's the explanation, but I don't really care. But yeah. So the challenge here is going to be, in terms of the colors, is going to be trying to give him trying to define all these separate different shades, because his design is purely monochromatic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add slight shades to certain parts of the black. I think some of it will have a slight blue shade, some of it will have a slight purple shade, some of it will have just a pure grey shade. And so that's going to be how I sort of define it. I think his skin is going to maybe have a bit of a purple tone to it. So that still has a sort of a, because again, skin tone is all red. It's all red toned in some respect. All skin is that way. All human skin, anyways. But I mean, well, even most animals also have that. I can't think of one that doesn't actually, in terms of their actual skin. But it's all red toned in some way, shape, or form. It's all red toned, and so having any purple, it still keeps that. It being like a little bit purpley, it still sort of keeps that. But we do also want this to look unnatural, so that's why it still sort of keeps a degree of that. But then it's also, it is also still somewhat humanoid. I do think that his blood is purple as well, so that's maybe a bit more. It makes more sense that way, because I know his blood isn't red. I think it's purple. I think his blood is purple. I don't remember exactly. I'm not going to check because I've decided on the purple toned skin now. But yeah, his eyes are going to be white. All this stuff. There's going to be the metal, which will have his mask, his gloves, or his gauntlets, not his gloves, his boots. Or his greaves, not his actual boot. His boot, I think, will be a different shade. And yeah, that's all the metal, and also the shoulder pads as well. Then there'll be a dark black, which I think maybe his hood and cloak, his gloves, his sash, the boots, and maybe then the accents on a lot of this other stuff should be the dark black as well. And then there should be one sort of fine, or there should actually be two. There should be the underlying tone of the robe, and then there should be the underlying tone of the trousers. That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. Well, I think this should maybe be the same color. This, the sort of centerpiece here, should maybe be the dark black then. If that's going to be the dark black, then what are we going to do? Because if that's going to be the dark black, then that's going to... The accents at the corner here don't make as much sense. I think that should be the same shade as the cloak, but maybe then the black of the gloves and boots should be a different color, and that should then be the... Yeah, maybe that make more sense. Anyways, I'll do these colors and I'll move on. I'll have to do my background as well, but the background will take 5 seconds because that's the same with all of these. They're all the same kind of background in all of these Mortal Kombat ones. It's just the tones. I'll probably make it a bit purpley or something like that, just so that it's not just pure black and grey, because I don't just want it to be pure black and grey, because that doesn't look very interesting to me. Anyways, I'll move on. We'll do these colours and I'll be back to do the painted shading. So yeah. Alright, so that's our colours. So, I've gone for a very purpley tone to everything. That's sort of fitting with some of the tones the character tends to have. Sometimes, more often than not, it's fairly neutral greys, but I've gone for slightly purple toning. Sometimes there's a purple toning, just so that there's a sort of a bluiness to it. Again, it's more of a modernism. I mean, in his original appearances, he was literally a silhouette. So, this is what we've got. So I'm going to be using a sort of a bluey purple tone to a lot of the painted shading. And I mean, that's our background there, it's also done. So again, the tones are pretty similar to what I laid out before. The primary sort of grey is a sort of like a purpley toned grey. But all this is going to get much darker as we go, as per usual. That's just sort of how these things operate. So I will do this painted shading, and then I'll be back to do the detailed shading and the light line and all those little bits. So yeah. Alright, that's our painted shading done. So now, it is time for the detailed shading and the light line and all our final little bits. And the painted shading is what's sort of really pulling this together so far, because it's unified our greys a little bit more, so now everything's feeling a little bit more appropriate. Things are looking a bit more as they should. That silver is a bit bright, but our gradient maps and everything will sort of tone that down, so there's nothing really to worry about. I'll need to apply some glow to the eyes. I'll probably do that right away, because otherwise I'll forget about it. Actually, I can't do that right away. I'll remember to do it anyways at some point. I'll do it at some point. So yeah, I'll do that during this section as well. Even though his eyes don't normally glow like dramatically, it's normally just that his eyes aren't particularly affected by light all that much. So I'm going to make it I'll try and make it subtle, the eye glow, if at all possible. Because his eyes don't usually glow at all. It's not quite the same as like Ermac, of where his eyes usually glow a little bit. Noob Saibot's eyes don't usually glow that much. He's normally just got very defined white eyes. So yeah. Is there anything else I really need to cover? I'm just sort of, for the interest of time here, we're nearly at the 4-hour mark in terms of the recording, so I would like to get this thing done. Yeah. I don't think there's anything else I need to cover, so I'll just do this and then I'll be back to wrap up. So yeah. Alright, that's our detailed shading, light line, and first gradient map done. So, let's continue. I mean, I did exactly as I said I would do with the color grade. It's all just a purple to a blue. It's fairly simple stuff. It's similar, if a little darker, than what we had with Sub-Zero. It's a little similar. It's not quite the same. It's definitely darker than that. So we'll just keep going here, and then I'll wrap up. So, let's make our duplicates and make this one a luminosity. This will make everything a lot darker. We don't want it to be that dark. I want to put it over everything. And I'll make this subtle. This is a pretty dark situation we've got here, so let's put that at 15%. And over that, we're putting on our color burn. A lower percentage than that. It's at 5%. So now it is time to grab our texture. And we can pop that over everything. And then that will be us, basically. So yeah, it's been pretty fun so far. It's actually not been as hard as I thought it'd be. Usually these Mortal Kombat ones tend to be a bit tricky, but this one hasn't been so bad. I kind of, like, most of the design I sort of came up with on the spot. Usually I have a bit of an idea for these more so in advance. Whenever I say on the spot, I mean when I was doing the base sketch, I came up with the the design then and there. Usually I have more of an idea of what I want it to be, but this time I just sort of winged it a little bit. I think we're actually going to want our text to be somewhat extreme this time, so 25% is probably good, because this is all we've got to brighten things up. I also put the eye glow on, I did nearly forget to do it, but it is pretty subtle, so yeah. Let's just look on the screen above. It's not as dark on the screen above, but it is still very dark. But granted, I mean, this is Noob Saibot. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be very dark. It should be very dark. That's kind of the point. So yeah, yeah. As I say, I usually have a bit more of an idea of what I intend to do in advance, but for this one, I kind of just winged it. I made it up as I was going. But I think it came out alright nonetheless. It's still very identifiable as Noob Saibot. I think, at least. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what more I could have really done with it. I was in a position of where I sort of had to think about, well, like, this can't look too similar to the other designs. I don't want it to look too similar to the other designs, so it kind of has to follow a bit of a different trend. It has to have a few distinctly different elements, so that's whenever the side tuck robe came into my mind, and the sort of the shroud over his shoulders. The shroud was the idea I had before. It was the only idea of the design I had going in. So I decided, okay, we can work with that. We can then add in the side, the sort of cross-tuck robe, then the sort of the spikes and the gauntlets. We have to make him look edgy. That's a big part of his design, is that he is edgy. So I was like, well, I can work with that. I can do this, and this. And so I just sort of came up with it on the spot, for the most part, a few days ago, whenever I did the base sketch. But you know, I think it worked out well enough, surprisingly. But yeah. Yeah, I think that's all I really need to say. I don't feel the need to do a long wrap up on this one because I don't need to pad for time. Not that that's what I normally do, but you know, sometimes I pad for time. But I don't need to do that here because this has been a 4-hour and 20-minute recording, and I just sort of feel I feel like I'm done with it now at this point. I normally tend to split these up a little bit more if I expect them to be this long, but yeah. Well, I got it done. I don't have to think about it again. So that's that. Anyways, that's enough post-stamble, I guess. But yeah, anyways, I think that's us. So I'll say goodbye and I will leave you. So, well, I'll just wrap up first, I suppose. Yeah, if you like the video, do whatever you normally do, whether that be liking or not. I can't make you like it, but I can politely suggest it, which I believe is what I've done. It's the same deal. If you want to subscribe, go for it. I would, of course, like it if you did that, but I can't make you, so you know where the subscribe button is. You've presumably watched a YouTube video before, so you know it's below. And of course, you already know that. If you have a suggestion for what you might see me draw in the future, you could leave a comment, politely worded. Won't read it otherwise. And yeah, if you choose to watch the next video, I will see you next time. So, with all that said, that is us. So I will say goodbye, and then that will be that. So, bye-bye.